Welcome back to another episode of BJCP Beer Reviews with Leo. Today I'm going to be trying category 20A American Porter with Founders Porter. This beer comes in at the top edge of the style with 6.5% ABV and 45 IBUs. It falls under the parent category 20 American Porter and Stout, which also includes sister categories American Stout and American Imperial Stout. Your one-sentence descriptor for the style is this: a substantial, malty dark beer with a complex and flavorful dark malt character. Now, before getting into the review, I'd like to mention that porters and stouts are quite similar, and if you are interested to know what differences or what differentiates them, please find my separate primer video on that subject right up here. Okay, with that out of the way, let's try this beer. So, I'm gonna open it up. We got Founders Porter. And I'm gonna be drinking this out of a Nonic pint glass. Okay, so we're going to start with the appearance. This is a quite dark beer with a nice brownish beige head. It's got relatively tight lacing with some larger bubbles at the surface as well. Seems to be holding its head pretty well, and it's forming some nice lacing. If you hold it up to the light, it's not the brightest light, but it's relatively opaque. I think that's fine. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 3 for appearance. Actually, the head is starting to fade a bit. That could have been partially the way I poured it, but still going to stick with a 3 out of 3. And today I'm going to try and write these down so I don't have to remember. Okay. Next up, I wanted to go into aroma. Wow, this is quite a brilliant aroma. You definitely get the dark roasted malt character. Let's see. Coffee can kind of come to mind, but I don't think that that's really what it is. It's I mean, honestly, yeah, it smells like a dark grain. I think you can get some aspects of chocolate, but or more like cacao, not like a sweet Hershey's bar, for example. But yeah, really pleasant. It's almost sweet in character, a bit nutty, I would say. Getting maybe some hazelnut. In general, it seems bang on for style. Really quite a nice aroma. Nothing overpowering. It doesn't come across like it's gonna hit you in the face with roastiness, but it does, it does tell you you're gonna get what you expect in terms of a dark beer, be that a porter or a stout. I really can't wait to get into this. I'm gonna give this a 12 out of 12 on aroma, actually. And then mouthfeel, so I'm going to give it a try. Give it a little shake first. You can see that you can regenerate the head reasonably well. Wow. Yeah, so the body is surprisingly drinkable. I think it's pretty close to medium, but it's almost thin in the sense that you feel like you could really just throw it back and keep drinking it. The carbonation is nice. It's effervescent, but it's not like overly biting or carbonic. Provides a nice warmth from that higher alcohol at the 6.5%. That's approaching the limit for the style. Astringency, I'm not really getting much in the way of astringency. I would say, if anything, it's the hop bitterness coming through, and for an American porter, that is what you would expect. That is present. And then in terms of how creamy it is, I mean, maybe I can try and regenerate this a little bit more rigorously. Yeah, so if you can make this big head reform, yeah, you get a lot more of that creaminess. If that head falls apart completely, then you're going to be left with without much, so to speak. In terms of mouthfeel, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Well, I'm not really sure if I can dock it for this. Honestly, I think I could use a bit more body and a bit more carbonation. I feel like the balance of the mouthfeel wouldn't change. So the balance of the mouthfeel is great, but I feel like you could get more out of this beer if it was a bit more full, but then also a bit more carbonated. But I'm being really nitpicky. Fuck it. I'll give it a 5 out of 5. Okay, so then the last, before I get into the overall impression, the last category to go through would be flavor, the largest and most important component. Obviously, when you're talking about porters, this is going to be a malt-dominated beer. And I do think the malt really holds up. Yeah, it's definitely a malt-forward beer, and that's in agreement with the style. Yeah, you definitely get some of that chocolatey character, and also the coffee kind of flavor. Honestly, I would say it's a bit roasty, which, if you're trying to differentiate porters versus stouts, that's actually more of a stout characteristic, but I think almost any example of porter, you're going to find a degree of that. The main thing is that the flavor is it's like a dark malt flavor. It's not entirely dominated by that roast character. So while there's aspects of the coffee, it's not entirely coffee based, and I think for that reason it's very much a porter. In terms of the hops, you don't get well defined hop character. I think the bitterness comes through and helps to balance out some of that dark malt flavor. This could definitely be relatively bitter for some people if they're not, very much into beer. Between like the coffee type aspects from the malt and then the bitterness from the hops, that's going to be characteristic of any American porter. So if you're trying to introduce someone who says they maybe like dark beers but don't like super bitter things, well, one, don't let them get close to a stout. They're definitely going to want to prefer, a porter. And then the American porter is obviously going to be a bit more hoppy and bitter. So if you can, try and find an English style porter instead, which will be also generally a little bit lower in alcohol. Just overall a more approachable beer. Yeah, you get more of that coffee character in the nose again, coming back to it. Other flavor characters. Well, oh yeah, let's comment on the finish and the aftertaste. The finish is quite dry, which is nice. It kind of cleanses the palate and It's got a little bit of astringency in that, um, and that kind of brings you back to wanting another sip. And I'm just like rolling through this. I really enjoy this beer and would like to just keep on drinking it. Yeah, if I had to try and describe some of the hop character, I guess I would go for maybe like a resiny, kind of a Pacific Northwest kind of character, maybe a little bit piney, but um, maybe some earthiness. I think that could be coming from the malts, but not especially continental, not floral, not citrusy certainly, um, but just that kind of, yeah, kind of that sticky, resiny, bitter pine for the hops. But again, that's very much secondary to the primary flavor, which is the dark malts, which you can get a little bit of toffee. I mean, when you try this, I don't know. For me, whenever I try any kind of dark ale, my mind immediately goes to like a British style. Um, it's lacking the sort of fruity esters you would expect from British ale yeast, but that's fine because this is an American porter. It's a really clean yeast profile, and again, that helps to showcase the malts first, the dark malts, and then the hops secondarily. So you want a clean ale yeast for an American porter because yeast is at the bottom of the totem pole for your flavor. So that's fine. Overall, then, I think flavor, I'm going to give that a 18 out of 20. And then for the overall impression, I mean, this is really a fantastic example of the style. I love almost everything about it. I would say it's deceptively drinkable for something coming in at 6.5%. I think in general porters should be more drinkable. They're a little bit smoother than stouts, except for maybe like a dry Irish stout where the lower ABV and the roastiness tends to be kind of balanced with the drinkability. But yeah, I mean, not an especially bitter or astringent beer, especially given that it's an American porter where you've got a lot of bitterness coming from the hops, and then it's definitely got like a prominent or noticeable roastiness, but I think it borders on the edge of like just the dark malt character. I don't get a whole lot of toffee, but maybe some of the kind of prune or like kind of raisiny flavors. And then definitely chocolate. I would imagine they probably used some amount of chocolate malt in their malt bill, which is great. It's a fantastic choice. Yeah, again, I mean, for a 6.5% beer, I kind of worry about advocating too strongly for this beer. I feel like I could easily throw back two or three of these, which could be dangerous if you're out for a while. Um, but that really just speaks to how drinkable and delicious this beer is. Um, Overall, I love this beer. I think for the overall impression, score, the drinking pleasure is very high and it seems very much to style. I think it'd be hard to dock it anything more than a point, but I'll give it the full 10 out of 10, and I don't even have to do the math because I only docked it a little bit on flavor. That's going to be a 48 out of 50, so this is just a really good example of the style. I know some people may not want to support founders after their recent sort of sellout to a larger company. For me, I think they're probably just increasing distribution, which means more people can get access to this. If you can get a hold of it, I would try. to try this beer. This is Founders Robust Porter. It's just called Porter, but yeah, their own little description with this woman is dark, rich, and sexy, and that is quite appropriate. I think the rich and sexiness perhaps comes from how smooth it is in drinking, which only adds to its already quite drinkable nature. And I think, again, that kind of validates my 10 out of 10 overall impression and very high score. I'm a big fan of Founders. I'm glad they've got big distribution now, and hopefully I'll try and include a few more examples of theirs as I work my way through the styles. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, if you would like to see more of these videos, I don't update or post these very frequently, so I would really appreciate if you subscribed, just so that I can make sure that my videos are getting seen. And as always, please feel free to leave any kind of comments or feedback. And if you live locally, right now I'm still in Delaware, I'm happy to try any of your homebrew beers and also rate those and do this kind of analysis, especially if it's a style that you don't see on the page already. With all that said, thank you and have a great day.